Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. We were remiss last week and we didn't post, but this is the DMZ America Podcast for Tuesday, March 27th, 2025. Coming to you from the left, I'm editorial cartoonist Ted Rall.
And it's May 27th, not March.
Right. Oh my God, I'm Bidening out. That's Scott Stantis coming to you from the right over there.
Hey, everybody.
So we are here to talk. This is the We Told You So edition of the DMZ America Podcast. Maybe not the first, maybe not the last. Certainly not the last. Jake Tapper's book, Original Sin, about the Biden cover-up of his physical and particularly his mental decline over the years, is out. I've read the entire thing. And we're here to basically take our victory lap on the ashes of American democracy and of the Democratic Party, but also to sort of just go through it and talk about, like, what exactly happened? Is there a way for the Democrats to come back from this?
Nope.
How do we move forward as an electoral democracy? How big of a scandal is all this? It's a big deal. I mean, Scott, this book paints a picture that's even worse than we thought. And you and I have been on top of this from the very beginning. When Joe Biden started running in late 2019, and it should be pointed out that his candidacy was really a disaster. When he came out of the gate in the early primaries, Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada, he placed, I think, third or fourth in all of those. He was way behind other candidates like Pete Buttigieg. Bernie Sanders was on top of the heap in all of those until he hit the James Clyburn wall in South Carolina. But apparently, Joe Biden, his son Beau died in 2015. He was the favorite son. I don't think that's anyone's secret. And understandably, I think for anyone who's a parent, his brain kind of turned to mush after that happened. According to Tapper and his co-author, basically after 2015, Joe Biden was no longer fit to serve in public office. And yet, 3-4 years later, the DNC and the power brokers were so scared inside the Democratic National Committee of Bernie Sanders and the prospect that he would not only be the nominee, but also that he might be elected president, and that would so anger the wealthy donors of the Democratic Party that they were willing to destroy the party in order to save it, as far as they saw it. And so they recruited, even though there were at one point 21 pretty high-profile Democratic candidates, people like Cory Booker, Amy Klobuchar, I mentioned Buttigieg. They decided
Whitmer from Michigan,
They bypassed them all. Elizabeth Warren, who was a very impressive candidate at the time. They sidelined all of them, and they decided to elevate Joe and basically put in the fix for him through the superdelegates and install him as the Democratic nominee. They orchestrated this, you'll remember, the day before Super Tuesday, this joint mass endorsement, gangster style of Joe Biden. By Buttigieg, Klobuchar, and Beto O'Rourke, right? All got together on the same stage and decided to endorse. Well, they all endorsed Biden. They were told to endorse Biden, and they did. And so that's how we ended up with Biden. He took advantage of the pandemic and say, well, I can't campaign because of the pandemic. Didn't stop Trump, but he just didn't really campaign. He stayed in his basement. We didn't see hide nor hair of him. If you paid careful attention, there's a lot of stuff that Joe said that didn't over Zoom, that didn't make a lot of sense. He didn't seem to be on his A game or on anyone's A game. And, basically this was a classic emperor has no clothes moment. And yet we kept being told, you and I, we were like, this guy, we've suffered through parents who were senile or suffering through dementia. This is that. And we were shouted, people like us, and there weren't many of us. We were shouted down. We were insulted. We were told that we were conspiracy theorists, that we were right-wing tools, that we wanted Donald Trump to win the presidency. We were treated really like shit. And
Yes.
and then he was elected, and basically the grift went on until ultimately July of last year when he had to pull out of the race and leave things to Kamala. There's a lot to go through here, right?
Well, let me ask this. Okay, Ted, one thing you and I think we excel at is trying to put things, particularly when we speak, and especially on this podcast, in historic context. And let's get the question first. Now, all of a sudden, and okay, I'm going to curse a lot during this podcast because I am so fucking pissed off. I am beside. Poor Ted has to hear me almost every morning. I just came back from a retreat, a silence retreat, which was really kind of a retreat for Ted too, because every morning I'd call Ted up and says, "Can you fucking believe these revelations?" And they shouted us down at every turn, motherfuckers. But so now all of a sudden the press, the mainstream media is saying this is the biggest political scandal in the history of the Republic. And now all of a sudden they're going the exact opposite way, right? So the question, let's answer this one first. Is this the biggest scandal in American political history? I think you can make the case to say yes. And let me build it quickly. I have not read the book. I've read excerpts, seen excerpts, talked to Ted about it, but I can guess some of the stuff. And first and foremost, a cabal of Jill Biden, his wife, along with some close advisors, 3 or 4 advisors, committed a coup d'etat in the United States, the likes of which we hadn't seen since Woodrow Wilson had a stroke in the late 19-teens. And if you remember, his wife signed documents for him, and I mean, it was pretty bad. Is this the biggest scandal in American history? Bigger than Teapot Dome, bigger than Watergate, bigger than Andrew Johnson? Is this the biggest scandal? Ted, I'm going to say it as regards the presidency. There have been bigger ones, bigger numbers, bigger dollar amounts, bigger, more schmarmy from the House and the Senate. But as far as the White House goes, to my mind, this is the big. I think that's an accurate description. Do you agree? Disagree?
100%. Look, Scott, what would be number 2? And I mean, it would. You tell me what's number 2.
I'd say
major scandal. There's been major scandals. January 6th is kind of a scandal. It's more an outrage than a scandal. Iran-Contra. I'm trying to go through them all. Right. The Monica Lewinsky scandal, Travelgate under Bill Clinton. What am I forgetting here?
Well, keep going back. You can talk about. Well, I like to say Teapot Dome, where you had the two cabinet level secretaries effectively selling chunks of the United States government, particularly. Of course,
that's happening now.
Well, now it's okay. Back then it wasn't so much. And that's what they thought when Harding died suddenly in San Francisco. I have my suspicions about his wife, by the way, doing the deed, but that's maybe another podcast. But the Teapot Dome scandal was pretty significant. You had Mobley. It was a scandal.
Thomas Jefferson, Sally Heming.
Well, that wasn't a scandal back then. That was I'm going to say. Yeah, but it wasn't a constitutional scandal like what we're talking about here.
No.
The Mobley, Blair.
Grover Cleveland, also a sex scandal.
Yeah, Mama, where's my pa? Gone to the White House, ha ha ha.
A lot of sex scandals.
Yeah, well, they're guys, they got needs. Grover Cleveland married his ward, which is very similar to marrying, your daughter.
That's kind of like, that's analogous to Woody Allen, right?
Yes, very much so. But there was a financial scandal concerning it. I mean, it amounted to, are you sitting down, Ted? $1,200. A scandal in the 1880s. It ensnared a lot of congressmen, including Speaker of the House Blair at the time, who was the Republican nominee, and concluded in the Great Kepler cartoon of the tattooed man with all these scandals attached to them, and they were very weak tea. None of them compared to the constitutional issue that the Biden scandal shows, and that there's no other word for it. It was a coup d'etat. I keep coming back to that word because this fits into that definition perfectly. It was the leader, the titular leader, shoved out of the way in favor of a shadow government, none of whom we elected. I mean, and Ted and I care about this stuff, and we don't know half these players. I mean, I hadn't heard of many of them. Had you?
Right. No,
but these guys.
I'm so glad you brought that up because, I mean, when we've been asking the question for 4 years, who's really running the country, right?
Yes.
I think we all assumed that it was a cabal of Obama-era hacks, including Obama himself, possibly as the eminence grise, like, the man behind the curtain. But we also assumed Secretary of State Tony Blinken, possibly Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin.
Yeah.
Some people like that on Speaker Pelosi, also Majority Leader Schumer, then turned minority leader. Turns out they were all on the outside looking in as well. They really didn't have much to say about any of this. Turns out that Jill Biden really was like Lady Macbeth. She really was. She became very ambitious, and she started pulling the strings. And she and her chief of staff, and like a deputy campaign advisor from 2020. Campaign advisors they're not government people, right? That's a different skill set. It's one skill set to elect it. It's another one to run things. But basically it was like 5 people, including the first lady, and they kept him aside. They appear in some cases perhaps to have even signed his signature to legislations. They issued executive orders. They set U.S. government policy. We're not really sure who decided to support Ukraine against Russia in the proxy war. That may or may not have been the president himself. It's like we're not really sure who really decided to double down on supporting Israel, even though Biden had a long history of supporting Israel. But going that deep in terms of supporting Israel in their war in Gaza, I mean, we really seriously don't know. I mean, so Scott, there's early on in 2021, relatively early on, not early on for you and me, because we saw it coming before 2021. You can look back on our old shows and we're talking about it. There are receipts, as they say.
Yes, there is a paper trail.
But if you go back to 2021, Nancy Pelosi recounts a story of, that was the only year that the Biden administration ever passed significant legislation, the infrastructure bill, but the Build Back Better bill. And at one point, she asked the president to do something very, very standard, saying like, listen, your caucus is a little wobbly on Capitol Hill. Mr. President, could you come down and cheer and basically urge the troops personally to vote for the bill? All he has to do is go in and meet with the Democratic caucus and say, it would really mean a lot to me if you were to support this. Presidents do this all the time.
Sure.
It's a standard thing. It's like
Donald Trump just did it recently for the big, beautiful bill to get out of the House.
And it passed. So it passed the House. So, okay. So Biden goes down there, basically meanders, tells a bunch of stories that are completely irrelevant, can't string two sentences together to save his life. And then he forgets in the end to make the ask. He never talks about Build Back Better. So Pelosi's like, that's weird. Maybe he just forgot. So she schedules a few weeks later, a do-over. It's all in the book. Same thing happens again. He just, and this time she's like, Mr. President, you have to make the ask. We need, this is the important thing. Scott, other occasions. He's on a call. This is happening like as things are falling apart, like after the disastrous debate in June of 2024 against Trump. And he's trying to rally over Zoom. He's trying to rally his Democratic caucus. And at some point, someone in one of his allies on Capitol Hill texts one of Biden's staffers and says, and tells him he's sounding too downbeat and pessimistic. Tell him to be more upbeat and optimistic. And so someone slides Biden a card that says that. Biden thinks it's something he's supposed to read and reads it to the. And we know that he's on a number of occasions, for example, on the teleprompter, he's read things like next page, wait for applause, and other prompts like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so the thing is, you and I have a lot of colleagues who have given us a hard time about our.
Yes.
I wouldn't even say it's our stance, our assessment of Biden, right? It's not really a stance. The thing is, they kind of poo-pooed this, but communication, and Tapper's good about talking about this, is a very important part of being president of the United States.
Oh, absolutely.
Arguably, it's the most important part. Because even if you don't have any original ideas and you're not particularly intelligent, and other people are coming up with the ideas, someone has to communicate those ideas to the American people, and that person is you. And if you can't do that, you can't be president. You can't do the job. Ronald Reagan was the great communicator. It's like JFK was no doubt a great communicator. Bill Clinton could be a great communicator. If you're not a great communicator, you can't do this job.
Yeah, and not just a communicator, but just have a grasp of what the hell is going on. And you and I, from the beginning, said, this guy, there's something wrong. Firstly, let's rewind. Let's take the Wayback Machine back to 2021. You had a guy who had just come off a campaign where he literally did maybe one event a day. Now, yes, you had COVID. They had COVID as cover. So he had the basement campaign. That's what they started calling it. But the fact is, he was not doing anything other than those events. You and I are conversant enough with
nor as president, by the way, according to the Tapper book. You know how we've made fun of Trump having what do they call that? Like presidential time?
Yeah.
Biden had a lot more of that. So he would have POTUS time, relaxation time. Basically, he was, first of all, only president from 10 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, period. But even during that time, he was rarely actually available. One of the reasons he was so bad at the debate is he never once attended a debate prep session.
Isn't that amazing?
He slept through them all.
Amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, the
he's
stakes are awfully.
He's like a student. He's like a college kid smoking too much weed who just sleeps through the exam. It
was mind-boggling. I'm not shocked by any of these revelations, by the way. I know you're not, Ted. I mean, it's gratifying isn't the right word, but it is affirming that, because we saw what we saw and we heard what we heard. And when our friend feeding us the bullshit line, oh, he has a stutter. Well, that's not a stutter. Being a total and complete imbecile.
There was no stutter. In fact, Biden was angry when people said that it was a stutter. He's like, I got rid of my stutter years ago when I was a kid.
It's not a stutter. A stutter means you stutter. It's like saying he has a limp, but he's talking. What is that? What? You don't have a limp when you talk. What the hell are you talking about? Not just that, but I mean, I remember following the days, the hours and the days following the debate, talking to some of our cartoonist friends who continued the bullshit line that somehow this guy was A-okay. This was just an anomaly. And that, it wasn't that bad of a performance. I mean, they were just continually doing these apologies and being apologists.
It was that bad of a fucking performance. It was a disaster.
You could not have scripted. Ted, seriously, you and I are writers. If we had written a screenplay where this happened, our agents would have said, this could never happen. This is way over the top. This is stupid.
True. Yeah.
Guess what, kids? So is this the biggest scandal in our history? I think it is. I think that it's certainly
close. I mean, like, yeah, let's enumerate it, right? I mean, they literally, okay, so here's the hilarious part. I'm going to do, you can't steal this. I'm doing a cartoon about it this week. But basically, just think about like how, and rightly so, how outraged Democrats have been about January 6th, 2021. And
rightfully so, I think.
Some right-wing Republicans, it basically attempted a half-assed coup d'etat to keep Donald Trump in office. Okay, that's pretty bad. And they broke a bunch of windows and broke some shit, and I guess, you know, desecrated Nancy Pelosi's desk. Bad stuff. Oh, and a Capitol Hill police officer ended up dead the next day from a heart attack. That's bad. It's bad. Okay, but how does that come close to knowingly, because you're so afraid that people might get $15 an hour minimum wage and might have Medicare for all, that you install a complete retard, complete brain dead, senile mofo who was never that smart in the first place. You run him for office, you lie to everyone, you chop off everyone's head who says that, like, you know, points out that there might be an issue here. You install him as Democratic nominee, then you get him elected. False pretenses, right? In a democracy, you know, you told the American people this guy is one thing, but actually he's not. You lie and you say, oh, it's only for one term. He's a bridge to the future. Then you keep up the ruse for 4 long years. Okay. And then you're like, oh, let's roll the dice and go for another. And while we're at it, you so don't take this seriously that you don't even bother to appoint a vice president who can easily step into office and and be someone that they all trust. You know how we know Kamala Harris couldn't do the job? They didn't think she could do the job.
Yeah.
All the people inside the DNC, Biden's people, they didn't think she could. Well, the number one responsibility of the VP is to be able to step in and do the job. 40% of all vice presidents become president eventually, one way or the other. How come, they didn't take this seriously? He was the oldest guy ever elected president. And, what was he? Senile and demented. So he was going to drop dead any second. I mean, they didn't take that seriously, and they were going to go for it again. I can't think of anything that Teapot Dome doesn't come close to that. Watergate is a joke compared to that.
Yeah.
Watergate did not, it would have impugned democracy in that, I guess if McGovern had amazing strategies in those briefing books that the burglars were trying to get at, and Nixon had gotten that amazing info, and that might have, but they didn't get it because they were all caught. So basically the election went the way it went in 1972. But and people already knew about the Watergate break-in by the time they voted, so there was no fraud. Okay, everyone knew who Richard Nixon and George McGovern were, and they voted the way they voted. The wrong way, but that's how they voted. This is electoral fraud. January 6th is an attempted coup, sort of. This is a coup.
Yeah,
and then
this was a coup d'etat.
It's carried on after the coup. It's not even like after the coup. Oh, by the way, we have to come clean with you guys. The guy you voted for, he's not who you think. But tough shit. There's nothing you can do about it now. No, we're going to keep it going and basically say that you're all stupid. And anybody like Scott and Ted who dare to say anything different, we're gonna call you names and marginalize you. The fact that we're having this conversation here on our podcast as opposed to on CNN is proof of what I'm saying. Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you a question. I have to step away for a second. I'll be right back. But I wanted to ask Ted to enumerate on this and do a dive into why I still don't get this. Why did they run for re-election? He said he wasn't going to. They didn't have to. Is there an element of, I guess, a Trumpian element of oh my God, Hunter Biden is being, he's being accosted by law enforcement for, oh my God, breaking the law. Geez, don't they know who we are? Was that what motivated them? Or, why did they keep doing that? Why did they run for re-election? And I'll be right back.
Okay, right. No, that's a great question. So I'll answer that question while Scott's off doing whatever he's doing. So basically, during that period in 2022, early 2023, when that decision was being made, you have to remember the state of the midterm elections. The Democrats were expecting to have significant losses from the big red wave in the 2022 November midterms, and that didn't materialize. In fact, it's not like Democrats exactly romped, but they picked up a few seats, and they didn't lose by nearly as much as they thought they would. So Democrats came out of that with a big sigh of relief. And then Joe Biden argued to his little cadre of people, the Politburo, as they called them, the 5 or so people, including the First Lady, who were actually running the country, and said, look, that's because of me. People like me. I should run for re-election. The 2022 midterms were a referendum on me. And therefore, I won that referendum, and I deserve to win.